Welcome back sa ating Law on Obligations and Contract series at nandito na nga tayo sa second to the last defective contracts, which is the unenforceable contracts under the Civil Code 1403 to 1408. Okay, so let's get on with the unenforceable contracts. So last time sinabi natin na ipa-flash natin ng paulit-ulit to para hindi natin makalimutan. Okay, so hanapin ko lang yung aking highlighter. Okay, so ayan. Nandito na nga tayo sa second to the last defective contract, which is unenforceable contract. Last time nabanggit natin kung ano nga ba ang rescissible and voidable contract. At medyo may pagkakahawig itong dalawang to. Okay, dahil naka-check sila lahat. Valid sila, binding sila, enforceable sila. Pero this time, medyo magkakaroon ng pagbabago. Ang defective contract na unenforceable contract ay valid lang pero hindi siya binding at hindi rin siya enforceable. Okay? So let's proceed to this next table. So bakit nga ba defective ang isang unenforceable contract? So nandito, lack of authority or form. Okay? So yan yung parang kumbaga main reasons kung bakit defective ang isang unenforceable contract. So can it be ratified? So the answer is yes. Okay? Kung mapapansin nyo, balikan natin to. Okay? Ang tanging pagkakaiba lang ng unenforceable contract from a void contract ay ito ay nananatiling valid. However, void contracts are invalid. Kaya nga void. Okay? So, dahil nananatiling valid ang isang unenforceable contract, meron pa ring chance, okay, na ma-cure yung defect nito. Okay? Kaya, pwede pa rin siyang i-ratify. Okay? Yun ang pagkakaiba niya from a void contract, which cannot be ratified because in the first place, hindi siya valid. Or, pag sinabi natin void contract, there's no contract at all. Okay? So, what are the applicable provisions under unenforceable contract? Primarily, we have Article 1403. Binabanggit ng article na ito lahat ng mga contracts that are unenforceable. At maya-maya, tatalakayin natin tong mga ito. Next, last time, medyo tinignan din natin tong mga remedies to avoid these defective contracts. So, dun sa unang dalawang defective contract natin, which is rescissible and voidable, meron tayong mga ways to avoid. So, nandito, di ba? Rescission when it comes to rescissible contract. Pag sinabi nating avoid, i-invalidate natin yung contract. So, ang isang rescissible contract ay ma-invalidate kapag ito ay ni-rescind. Ang voidable contract naman, ito ay ma-invalidate kapag ito ay na-annul. Okay? However, unenforceable and void contracts did not to be avoided or invalidated or alisan ng effect. Okay? Dahil, in the first place, unenforceable and void contracts ay walang effect. So, balikan natin. Walang effect. So, ito yun. Okay? Hindi siya binding, hindi siya enforceable. Okay? So, ang tanging, inuulit ko, ang tanging pagkakaiba lang between an enforceable contract at void contract ay yung chance na yung unenforceable contract maging perfectly valid contract via ratification. Okay? Kaya nga, yes pa rin yan. However, void contracts can never be ratified. There's no, parang kumbaga, walang exemption dito. Okay, this is an absolute rule. Hindi po pwedeng ma-ratify ang void contract dahil walang pwedeng i-ratify. Okay? So, proceed na tayo sa ating unenforceable contract. Okay? What makes a contract unenforceable? So, pasisimplihin natin yung Article 1403. We have actually 3. Okay? This situation or itong mga nakalista dito, 1, 2, 3, ay mga reasons kung bakit nagiging unenforceable ang isang contract. Okay? So, unahin natin number 1, unauthorized contracts. Okay? Lahat ng mga contracts entered, okay, into the name. Okay? Contracts entered using the name of another person, which is not authorized, are unenforceable contracts. Okay? Number 2, both parties are incapacitated. Okay? Ang pagkakaiba nito from voidable contract, yung voidable kasi isa lang ang incapacitated. Yung kabilang party capacitated. So voidable contract 'yon. However, kapag both parties na ang incapacitated, magiging unenforceable na yung contract natin. And lastly, yung mga transactions that are mentioned under the statute of frauds, kapag sila ay nag-enter ka sa mga transaction na ito orally. Okay? Orally. Pag sinabi nating orally, salita lang. Walang written contract. Okay? So, unahin natin yung unauthorized contract para mas malinawan tayo dun sa sinasabi natin kanina. Okay. So, isa itong example, actually dalawang examples natin ng unauthorized contracts dito. Okay? Actually, ito lang ang example natin, yung una. Yung pangalawa, ang tanong is, pasok pa rin ba ito sa tinutukoy nating unauthorized contract? Okay? So, unahin muna natin yung una. A, representing himself as agent of P, sold P's land to B. So basically dito, okay, nakikipag-transact si A with B. Pero, okay, nire-represent niya si P. So meaning si A, agent lang ni P. At si P pa rin ang nakikipag-transact kay B legally. Okay? Yun ang ibig sabihin nun. Kumbaga, extension lang ng personality ni P si A. So, in this case, inuulit ko, ang talagang nakikipag-transact, okay, ay si P at si B. Pero ang tanong, authorized nga ba talaga si A na ibenta yung property ni P? Okay, if hindi siya authorized, ito pong contract between P and B is unenforceable. So meaning, pag sinabi natin unenforceable, neither P nor B can demand anything from each other. Ibig sabihin, si B, hindi niya pwedeng i-demand yung delivery ng land. Ganon din si P, hindi niya pwedeng i-demand yung payment from B kasi unenforceable yung contract nila kung hindi inauthorize talaga ni P si A na ibenta yung kanyang property. Okay? So this is an example of an authorized contracts that results to an unenforceable contract. Okay. Punta naman tayo dito sa pangalawa. A sold P's land to B. So ang pagkakaiba nito, itong pangalawang example natin dito, binenta niya siya not in the name of P, but in his own name. So, ang tanong, is this considered to be an unauthorized contract which will result eventually to an enforceable contract? The answer is no. Okay? Actually, kapag ganito lang mismo yung nakasulat, this is valid. Okay? This is valid because kapag mag-aaralan natin under contract of sale, which is hindi pa natin naaabot ngayon kasi nasa oblicon pa lang tayo, kapag pinuntahan natin yung rules sa contract of sale, ang pinaka-requisite doon ay hindi necessarily owner dapat si A ng binibenta niyang object. Okay? So ang binibenta niya kasi yung land ni P. Okay? Pero kapag sale kasi, hindi naman necessarily dapat sa'yo or ikaw ang owner ng binibenta mo. Ang importante dito is kapag i-deliver mo na yung LAN kay B or yung binebenta mo, dapat meron kang right to transfer ownership. Okay? So, ang mangyayari dito is actually kapag required na si A na i-deliver yung LAN kay B at nananatiling pagmamayari pa rin ito ni P, the contract between A and B has no effect. So therefore, wala, hindi siya valid. Okay, void siya. However, ganito, what if the contract of sale between A and B, meron siyang condition wherein hindi mo na kaagad i-deliver ni A yung LAN kay B? Okay? So, possible ba na maging valid pa yung contract of sale dito? The answer is yes. Okay, the answer is yes kasi hindi pa naman required i-deliver. Ang requisite natin under the contract of sale, okay, dapat meron kang right to transfer the ownership at the time of delivery. Pero hindi pa naman dumarating yung time of delivery. So therefore, kapag ganun yung situation sa contract between A and B, ang mangyayari is meron pang time or meron pang opportunity si A na makuha or makakuha ng right to transfer the ownership of P's LAN. Malay nyo, di ba? Bago dumating yung date of delivery, mabili niya kay P yung lupa. So, essentially, sa kanya na yung lupa. So, valid na yung pagbebenta niya kay B. Or, let's say, may utang pala si P kay A. Tapos, parang kumbaga, naka-mortgage pala yung LAN at na-foreclose siya. Parang ganun. Pero, syempre, in no case pala na mapupunta kay A yung LAN kasi ang tawag na doon ay pactum commissorum. So, ignore nyo na lang yun. Medyo malayong topic pa yun. Okay? So, ang bottom line is, may chance pa si A na magkaroon ng right to transfer the ownership over P's LAN bago dumating yung date of delivery. Okay, so in this case, itong pangalawang example po natin, okay, hindi po siya 100% pasok sa example natin under unauthorized contract. Okay, so baka kasi common misconception is ito, yung kapag binenta niya in his own name. Okay, binenta niya in his own name. Ang tinutukoy po dun sa Article 1403 ay kapag binenta niya in the name of his principal. Okay? Pero unauthorized siya. Okay? So, that will result to unenforceable contract. So, sana hindi kayo malito doon. So, inuulit ko, yung first example natin, okay, itong A representing himself as agent, ito po yung example ng unauthorized contract that will result to an unenforceable contract. Pero yung pangalawang example natin yan, medyo medyo hindi siya 100% pasok dyan kasi may kumbaga yung provisions ng contract of sale ang parang kumbaga magiging applicable dito. Okay? So next, another example para mas malinawan tayo. Another example, A, agent of P, sold P's LAN to B in installment. A is only authorized to sell P's LAN in cash. Okay. So, ganito. Yung kaninang example, ito, walang authority. Okay? Walang authority para ibenta. So, yun? Parang kumbaga, yung mismong pagbebenta, walang authority. So, therefore, this is an unauthorized contract. Sa example naman na ito, authorized siyang ibenta. Pero, merong limitation yung kanyang authority. At ang ginawa niya, anong ginawa niya? In-exceed niya yung limitation na yon. In-exceed niya yung kanyang authority. Sabi nila, cash lang. Sabi ni, sino yan? Sabi ni P, cash lang ang pagbebenta natin. Pero binenta niya via installment. So this is unauthorized. Okay? At pasok pa rin ito sa unauthorized contracts. Okay? Pasok pa rin po ito. Although meron siyang authority to sell, pero in-exceed niya yung kanyang authority, so this is still considered an unauthorized contract that will eventually lead to an unenforceable contract. So by the way, inuulit ko, ang contract dito sa example na to ay between, baka kasi malito kayo, akala nyo between A and B, pero mali po yun dahil si A ay agent lang ni P. So the contract is between P and B. So the contract between P and B, in this case, is unenforceable. Okay? So inulit ko, unenforceable. Okay? Because in-exceed ni A yung kanyang authority. Okay? So sana nalinawan kayo doon. Next, okay. Ano naman ang exemption when it comes to this one, unauthorized contract? So A, representing himself as agent of B, sold B's land to B. Okay, so ang exemption po niyan ay kapag ni-ratify ng principal. Okay, pag sinabi nating ni-ratify, although initially, hindi niya inauthorize na ibenta, pero biglang si A, nakahanap ng buyer, binenta niya without authority from A, binenta niya, ang nangyari is medyo maganda yung naging negotiation nila at medyo maganda yung price ng napagbentahan niya. So, eventually, si P naman, total maganda naman yung price, although hindi niya initially inauthorize si A, ang ginawa niya na lang is ni-ratify niya yung sale. So, ang nangyayari dito is, hindi na siya unenforceable. Perfectly valid na po ang contract natin once na na-ratify. Okay? So, inuulit ko, kapag na-ratify ang isang unenforceable contract, magiging perfectly valid na siya. Actually, that is applicable to all other defective contracts except void contracts kasi hindi naman pwedeng ma-ratify ang void contracts. So, next. Okay. So, next. Ito yung pangalawang tawag dito, situation wherein it will result to an enforceable contract. So, both parties are incapacitated. So, this, tignan natin itong example natin. A minor, sold his bicycle to B. Also a minor. So, para silang minor. So, therefore, this is unenforceable. Okay? This is unenforceable. What is the exemption? The exemption is if the guardians of both A and B ratified the contract. So, kapag ni-ratify nila, sabi nila, nalaman nila, ba't mo binenta? Okay, ba't ka bumili ng bike? Saan mo nakuha ang pera? Kinupit mo ata, parang gano'n. Okay, so, pero, despite knowing that, ang nangyari is, okay lang sa kanila. Parang kumbaga, sige, total, nandyan na yung bike. Sige, gamitin mo na. Tapos, ito naman yung, yung nagbenta ng kanyang bike is, amin na yung pera. Pambili ko ng school supplies, parang gano'n. So, in that case, that the contract between A and B is ratified by the guardians. Okay? So, in that case, perfectly valid na po yung contract between A and B. It's no longer unenforceable. Okay? So, next punta tayo sa last. Okay? Last, anong tawag dito? Last scenario or last situation kung paano maging unenforceable ang isang contract. So, kapag itong mga transaction na to, kapag yung contract natin ay nagpo-fall under the statute of frauds. Okay? Statute of frauds. At ito ay nag-enter ka sa mga transaction na ito orally only. Verbally. Okay? Verbally. So, sabi kasi ng statute of frauds, itong mga contract na to, dapat in writing siya, at least in writing, para maging enforceable. Okay? Kasi kung hindi siya in writing, anong mangyayari? Magiging unenforceable siya. So, inulit ko, itong pitong to, okay, itong pitong nakasulat dito, dapat in writing siya para maging valid and enforceable. So, kapag hindi siya in writing, ang mangyayari is magiging unenforceable siya. So, inahin natin. So, tingnan natin, di ba? Kung mapapansin nyo, medyo may mga item na medyo hindi natin maintindihan kung ano nga ba yan without an example. So, syempre, magbibigay tayo ng example sa mga yan. Pero, may mga item din na medyo ito na mismo yung example, di ba? So, pag titignan nyo yung number 4, number 5, di ba? So, very, tawag dito, very, siguro pwede nating kumbaga as is, di ba? As is. So, kapag nagbebenta tayo ng personal property which has a price of 500 pesos or more, dapat in writing siya. Okay? Kasi kung hindi siya in writing, ang mangyayari is unenforceable yung contract of sale po natin. Ganon din sa number 5, lease of real property for more than 1 year. Okay, so sana medyo mag-ingat-ingat tayo dito sa mga amounts na to, sa mga period na ito. Kasi medyo nakakalito yan pag bigla na kayo magsasagot, di ba? So, inuulit ko, pag sale of personal property at ang price niya ay 500 pesos or more, so pag saktong 500, kailangan in writing na siya. Okay? So, ayan. And number 7, medyo ano rin to? Okay din, sale of real property. So this time, unlike the sale of personal property, regardless of price ito, kahit na less than 500 pa yan. Okay, kailangan in writing na yan kasi real property ang pinag-uusapan natin dito. Ano ba yung mga example ng real property? O, nandyan, land, building, di ba, house, etc. Okay, so yan yung mga real property po natin. Okay, so regardless of price po yan, kailangan in writing siya. Okay, para maging valid and enforceable. So kapag orally lang yan, magiging unenforceable contract po yan. Okay? So, tingnan natin yung mga ibang items para mas maintindihan natin. Okay, before that pala, meron tayong exemption sa statute of frauds. Okay? Ang exemption po yan ay kapag yung contract po natin ay partially executed na. Okay? Partially executed. Ibig sabihin, kapag meron ng nagawa, okay? Meron ng medyo na-consummate na yung ating what do you call this? Yung contract po natin. Okay? So for example, balikan natin tong mga example natin dito sa statute of frauds. Okay? Yung sale of personal property for more 500 pesos or more. Okay? Let's say si A seller, si B buyer. Okay? So, binenta, pwede bang magkaroon ng contract of sale nang wala pang nagagawa? Let's say, wala pang nagbayad, wala pang nag-deliver nung binibenta. Pwede ba yun? Pwede bang magkaroon ng contract of sale? Napa-perfect ba ang contract of sale without doing those obligation? Actually, yes. Kasi a contract of sale is consensual. So, as long as nagkaroon kayo ng meeting of minds, perfected na po yung contract of sale natin. So, you don't need to, a contract of sale doesn't need to, na magkaroon ng payment of price or the delivery of the object before siya ma-perfect. Kasi it's merely consensual. Okay? So, ayan. Let's say, nagkaroon ng contract of sale between S and B, seller and buyer. Pero wala pang nagagawa. So, mag-a-apply pang statute of frauds dito. Mag-a-apply pa po siya. Okay? Mag-a-apply pa siya. Ibig sabihin, later on, okay? Later on, kapag sasabihin ni S, B, bayad mo. Pwedeng tumanggi si B. The answer is yes. Pwede siyang tumanggi. Bakit? Anong reason? Kasi unenforceable yung contract. Bakit unenforceable? Kasi pasok siya under statute of frauds at hindi siya in writing. Verbal lang yung sale. Okay? So yun. At yung price niya is more than, 500 pesos or more. Di ba? So yun ang mangyayari doon. Okay? Yun ang mangyayari doon. Pero as an exemption, ganito. Okay? Exemption natin, ganito. Partially executed contract. Okay? Partially executed contract. So what if, doon sa example natin, nakapagbigay na ng down payment si B, let's say, kahit piso na down payment from the 500 pesos na price, okay, nung binebenta ni S. Nagkaroon na ng down payment. Okay? So, ano na ang status ng contract natin? The answer is, our contract is now perfectly valid. Bakit hindi na pwedeng mag-apply si statute of fraud? Bakit? Bakit hindi na pwedeng mag-apply? Kasi exemption nga. Okay, nasa exemption nga. Hindi na mag-apply si statute of fraud kapag partially executed na yung contract natin, which is yung binanggit ko, o partially nagbigay na ng down payment, di ba? Nagbigay na ng down payment, or let's say sabihin natin binayaran niya ng buo or nagbigay ng down payment, it doesn't matter. Meron ng maliit na nagawa dun sa contract. Partially executed na yung contract, so hindi na mag-apply si statute of frauds. Ganun din, vice versa, kapag let's say hindi bayad ang pinag-usapan na natin. Let's say, na-deliver na pero hindi pa nagbabayad, okay? So, partially executed pa rin yung contract natin and therefore, hindi na mag-apply si statute of fraud. So, that is already a valid contract kapag partially executed na siya. Okay? Hindi pwedeng sabihin ni B, unenforceable yung contract natin so hindi ko babayaran. Na-deliver na nga sa kanya, di ba? Na-deliver na sa kanya, so unfair naman. So, yun. Yun yung reason doon kung bakit kapag partially executed na. So, unfair naman. Bigla niya sasabihin, hindi ko gustong mag-go through dito sa contract natin dahil under siya ng statute of frauds. Yung price niyan ay 500 pesos or more and hindi siya in writing, wala kang katibayan. Verbal lang yung naging transaction natin. So, ayun. Hindi pwedeng maging reason yun kasi yun nga, partially executed na yung contract, hindi na mag-a-apply si statute of frauds. Okay? So, yun yung exemption. Okay, so ayan. Isa-isahin natin. Ito yung number 1. Contracts not to be performed within a year. So, X and Y verbally agreed to form a partnership. Okay, to form a partnership. To form a partnership after 13 months. Okay, so verbally, nandiyan yung word na verbally. Okay. So, let's say, dumating yung 13 months na yan. Nag-lapse na yung 13 months na yan. So, sabi ni Y, alika na, buuin na natin yung partnership. Biglang sabi ni X, hindi, ayaw ko na. So, justified ba yung under the law, justified ba yung pagtanggi ni X? The answer is yes, justified kasi hindi enforceable yung contract dito. Okay, hindi enforceable to. Bakit? Kasi verbally lang. Okay, at pasok siya sa statute of frauds which is yung number 1. Ano yun? Contracts not to be performed within a year. Okay? Di ba? Mapaperform lang siya hindi within a year. 13 months after 13 months pa. So, in this case, unenforceable na to. Kasi verbal siyang pinasukan. So, dapat may kasulatan pag mga ganito klaseng kontrata. Next, a special promise to answer for the death, default, or miscarriage of another. Okay, so perfect example is guarantee, a contract of guarantee. So D is indebted to C, G orally guaranteed this debt. So ganito, ano ba ang ginagawa ng guarantor? So basically si G ang guarantor dito. Anong ginagawa ng guarantor? Kapag hindi makabayad si debtor, okay, sinong debtor dito? Si D. Si creditor, pwede siyang pumunta kay guarantor. Pero in this case, hindi po. Okay? Hindi na po. Bakit? Kasi unenforceable yung contract of guarantee. Why? Because it was only entered orally. Okay? Dapat in writing ang contract of guarantee para mahabol ka. So ayan. Kapag ginarantihan lang verbally, walang effect po yun. Unenforceable contract po yun. Okay, so dapat kapag nag-guarantee, dapat in writing. Okay? Next, agreement in consideration of marriage. Okay, so agreement in consideration of marriage, ito. Z orally obliged himself to give Y a piece of land if Y marries his daughter X. So, si X, anak ni Z. At sabi ni Z, kapag pinakasalan mo ang anak ko, bibigyan kita ng lupa. Okay? So that is an agreement in consideration of marriage. Okay. However, pinakasalan nga ni Y, si X. However, nung sabi ni Y, asan na po yung lupa ko? Biglang ayaw ibigay ni Z. Okay? So justified ba yung refusal niya na hindi mag-comply with that obligation? The answer is yes, justified. Bakit? Kasi unenforceable yung contract. Oral lang kasi siya. Nagfo-fall siya under the statute of frauds, di ba? So, dapat yung mga ganitong klaseng agreement, must be in writing para ma-enforce mo, ma-enforce, di ba? Okay? So next, so ito yung example natin kanina, sale of personal properties. So, tatandaan nyo lang, dapat 500 pesos or more. Pero tatandaan natin yung yung exemption sa mga stage of frauds, yung di ba? Kapag partially executed na. So sana hindi tayo magkamali doon. Lease of real property for more than 1 year. So this must be in writing in order to be enforceable. Okay? What if lease of personal property? So it doesn't matter kung ilang years mo siya ililist. Kahit na verbal pa yan, okay lang. So hindi siya pasok sa stage of frauds natin. So kapag lease of personal property, valid na yun regardless of form. Next, a representation as to the person or as to the credit of a third person. Okay, so tingnan natin. So A, an insolvent person is in need of cash. So A asks B for help. So matulungin si B. So B represented A as having good credit to C. Anong ginawa ni C? Who extends a loan to A because of B's representation. So nagtiwala siya dun sa representation. So ayan nga. O hulaan nyo, anong mangyayari later on? Siyempre, hindi makakasingil si C kasi insolvent si A. Okay? Tapos binigyan niya, winaldas ulit yung pera. O anong nangyayari? Hindi makakasingil si C. Okay. Ang tanong, meron bang right of action si C against B? Okay. Kasi si B yung nagrepresent ng credit. Meron ba siyang right of action against kay B? Okay, may nabuo bang contract o parang yung representation between C and B? The answer is yes, may nabuo, pero enforceable ba? The answer is no, hindi siya enforceable. Bakit? Kasi okay, oral. Okay, may nabanggit ba dito? Parang wala akong nalagay pala. Okay, wala akong nalagay. Okay. So assuming nilagay natin dito na ang tawag dito. Assuming nilagay natin dito na yung representation ay oral lang. Okay, assuming kapag oral lang yung representation, ginawa niya orally. Sinabi niya lang, kasi sinabi niya lang na, ito, yan, kailangan niya ng pera pero hindi pala pero. Kailangan niya ng pera and meron siyang magandang good credit standing, parang ganun. So, yung representation na yun, oral lang kapag sinabi lang, di ba? Kapag hindi in writing. So, dapat in writing to para si C may habol kay B. Once na yun nga, biglang, bakit? Sabi mo, maganda yung reputation niya, maganda yung credit niya, pinautang ko, yun pala, insolvent na siya bago ko palang pautangin. Okay, so ayan. Okay, so inulit ko, ma-enforce lang ni C from B. Okay, makakapag-enforce lang siya ng liability from B kapag in writing. Okay, in writing yung ating representation. So tatandaan nyo po yun. Okay? So, and last, ito nga, sale of real property. However, ito, nabanggit ito sa Article 1358. Okay? At nilink niya ito sa Article 1403, which is, ito nga, pinag-uusapan natin. Yung mga reasons kung bakit nagiging unenforceable ang isang contract, including the statute of frauds, di ba? Okay, so ito nga, originally nabanggit siya sa Article 1358. So, kapag sale of real property, that is unenforceable. So kapag nagbenta ka ng lupa, nagbenta ka ng building, nagbenta ka ng bahay, tapos hindi siya in writing, ang mangyayari is, yun nga, unenforceable yung contract po natin. Pero tandaan nyo yung exemption, inuulit ko. Maraming nagkakamali dito. Kapag partially executed na ang isang contract, hindi na mag-a-apply ang statute of frauds. Tatandaan nyo po yun. Okay? Another na pagkakamali, akala nila yung partially executed contract na rule ay nag-a-apply din when it comes to, what do you call this? When it comes to, kapag both parties are incapacitated. Tapos, yung isa pa, yung unauthorized contract. Hindi nag-a-apply dun yun. Nag-a-apply lang yung exemption na yun under yung mga unenforceable contracts natin under the statute of frauds. Okay? So tatandaan po natin yan. Okay? So hello guys and welcome back to our Law on Obligations and Contracts series. So narito na tayo sa ating voidable contracts na video. So this is based from the article 1390 to 1402 of the Civil Code of the Philippines. So before tayo mag-start, please subscribe to our channel para ma-update kayo sa ating mga susunod pang mga videos. Okay, so let's start. So ito yung magiging overview ng ating pag-uusapan ngayon. So number 1, i-define natin kung ano nga ba ang mga voidable contracts or ano ba yung mga characteristics nito. Pangalawa, yung pangalawa at pangatlo actually are the reasons kung bakit nagiging voidable ang isang contract. So that is incapacity and if there is a presence of one of the vices of consent. So i-discuss natin yan into two separate sections of this video. Okay, so balikan natin. Next, pang-apat, itatalakay natin kung ano nga ba ang meaning ng annulment. Okay, so ano nga ba ang effect ng annulment sa isang voidable contract. Next, pang-lima, titignan natin ang difference, okay, between annulment and rescission. Kung maalala nyo, ang rescission ay tungkol sa rescissible contracts, which is previous video po natin yon. Okay? And lastly, we will talk about ratification of voidable contracts. So, let's start muna sa pag-alam or pagtingin sa status ng isang voidable contract. So, what are voidable contracts? Okay, so ayan nga. Based from okay, yan natin. Nasaan yung aking based from Article 1390, okay, ito yung mga reasons kung bakit nagiging voidable ang isang contract. Okay? Kapag merong isa sa mga parties which is incapable of giving consent, okay, magiging voidable po yung contract natin. Okay? Ang status ng contract po natin ay voidable. So maya-maya talakayin ano nga ba ang pagiging voidable. So in comparison with other types of defective contracts. Okay, so gusto ko lang linawin na ang tinutukoy nating incapacity dito is yung absolute incapacity. Okay, kasi merong dalawang uri ng incapacity. Una, itong nabanggit natin dito, absolute incapacity. Meron din tinatawag na relative incapacity. Ang pagkakaiba po ng dalawa, yung absolute incapacity, kapag ang isang tao ay absolutely incapacitated, sa kahit anong contract, hindi siya pwedeng magbigay ng consent. Meaning, lahat ng contract na pasukan niya ay magiging voidable ang status. Okay? However, kapag relatively incapacitated naman ang isang tao, may mga certain contracts lang na hindi niya pwedeng pasukan. So, let's say pinasukan niyo yung specific contract na yon. Ano ang magiging status ng contract na yon? Actually, usually, it is a void contract. Okay? So, for example, donations between husbands and wives. Kapag pinasok nila yon, yung kontratang yon, contract of donation, it will, yung magiging status ng contract of donation po natin ay void. Okay? So, yun. Although, ang mga husbands and wives, syempre, generally, mga na yan, mga 18 years old and above na yan. So, usually, sa ibang klaseng contract, pwede silang magbigay ng consent. Pero, yung specific contract na yun, which is a contract of donation, hindi pwede. Okay? So, balik tayo dito sa number 1, which is absolute incapacity. Pero, itong absolute incapacity po natin, hindi po ito, tawag dito, absolute talaga na, kumbaga, kapag merong absolutely incapacitated, automatically voidable yung contract natin. Siyempre, meron tayong exemption kasi general rule lang yun. At ang exemption po natin ay when the contract involves necessary. So mamaya may example tayo dyan. Number 2, when one or more of the vices of consent is present. So meron tayong 5 vices of consent na i-discuss natin in detail later on. Okay? So unahin muna natin yung okay, so before tayo pumunta dun sa yung nag-discuss natin kanina, yung number 1 and number 2, tignan muna natin ang status ng isang voidable contract. So ayan, itong table na ito, pinakita na natin mula nung nag-discuss tayo ng resistive contract, at ngayon, uulitin natin yan. Okay? Actually, uulitin natin yan hanggang void contract para hindi nyo makalimutan. Okay? So, voidable contract, ang mga voidable contract ay, ayan, valid, binding, and enforceable. So, actually, ang meaning ng isang voidable contract ay isang contract which is valid until annulled. Okay? So, valid pa rin siya. So, kung mapapansin nyo, parehas lang sa rescissible contract. Halos may pagkakahawig yung rescissible contract and voidable contract kasi pareho silang valid, binding, enforceable until rescind kapag rescissible, tapos naman sa voidable until annulled. Okay? So, yun ang pagkakaiba nila. Okay? So, yung unenforceable and void, mga susunod pang videos yung mga yan. Okay? So, next slide tayo. Okay. So, ito, pinlash natin to last time ulit sa rescissible. Pero this time, ipa-flash natin ulit para hindi nyo makalimutan. Ganyan din, ipa-flash natin pagdating sa unenforceable at void. Okay, so punta tayo sa voidable. Tingnan natin to, itong column ng voidable. Okay, so bakit daw siya defective? Usually, the defect is on the consent. Okay, consent side. Kung mapapansin nyo, yung dalawang reasons po natin kung bakit voidable yung contract kanina, di ba? Number 1, incapacity. Ibig sabihin, although nagbigay ng consent yung isang party, pero parang kumbaga yung consent na yun, medyo hindi siya ganun ka-intelligible. Especially, for example, nagbigay ng consent ang isang, let's say, minor, di ba? So, bata pa lang yun. So, hindi pa, kumbaga murang isipan pa lang yun. Okay? Ganun din kapag, let's say, baliw, di ba? So, ang baliw ay incapacitated din. So, kapag nagbigay ng consent ang isang baliw sa isang contract, so mukhang hindi yun intelligible, baka hindi niya na i-consider yung contract, which is di ba? So which is pwedeng maging burdensome sa kanya or pwedeng kumbaga lugi siya dun sa kontrata. So yung mga ganong klaseng kontrata, kapag pinasukan ng baliw, insane person, usually voidable siya. Okay? So yun yung kung bakit siya defective. Consent ang problema. Ganon din kapag dun sa number 2 na reason natin kung bakit voidable yung contract, which is yung mga presence ng 1 or 2 or combination of the different vices of consent. Okay? Which will be discussed later on in details. Okay? Can it be ratified? Yes. Okay? Applicable provisions, so Article 1390, nababanggit dyan yun. And remedy to avoid. Okay, so what are we referring to avoid? Anong i-avoid natin? I-avoid natin yung contract. Okay, so the remedy to avoid a voidable contract, pag sinabi natin avoid, to invalidate a voidable contract, is the annulment. Okay, so yung kanina, tawag dito, rescissible, rescission. Okay, at kung mapapansin nyo, pagdating sa unenforceable and void, NA. So, na lang, secret muna yan ngayon. Okay? Pagdating natin sa video na yan, tsaka natin explain in detail. Okay? So, let's go to incapacity. So, kanina, nabanggit natin. Okay? Ayan, number 1. When one of the parties is incapable of giving consent. So, absolute incapacity. Pero meron tayong exemption. Okay? So, example, M, a minor, bought food from X, 25 years old. So, take note pala, one lang isang party lang. Yung isa, capacitated siya. Kasi kung parehong incapacitated, hindi siya mag-fall sa voidable. Mag-fall siya under unenforceable. Okay? Sa future video po natin yun, i-discuss. Okay? This contract may have been voidable. Okay? Voidable sana ito, pero, okay? This contract involves a necessary. Ano ba yung mga necessary natin? I-lay down natin, mga food, water, shelter, ano pa ba, clothing, education, etc. Okay? So, lahat ng considered necessaries, kapag yun ang object ng contract, kahit na minor, okay, or incapable of giving consent yung isa sa mga party, perfectly valid na po itong contract na ganito. Okay? Hindi po siya voidable. Perfectly valid na itong contract na to. Kasi exemption nga yun kapag when the contract involves necessaries. Okay? So, another example, hindi ko alam kung may mga uh, naka-experience na sa inyo ng question na ganun, yung ano, kapag medical, ano naman, medical care, parang gano'n. So, yung mga gano'n, necessaries din yung mga yun. For example, ginamot ka ng doktor without your, let's say, without, when you are, ano, parang kumbaga habang minor ka pa lang. So, hindi pwede mo bang sabihin na minor pa lang ako, voidable yung kontrata natin, hindi kita babayaran. So, hindi po pwede yun. Perfectly valid na yung contract because it involves necessary. Okay? So next, when one or more of the vices of consent is present. So, meron tayong 5 nabanggit kanina and one of those is violence. Ano nga ba ang violence? So, nandito po ang definition ng violence. When in order to wrest consent, serious or irresistible force is employed. Okay? So merong physical dito. Okay? May involved na physical contact. Okay? Doon sa isang party. Okay? So for example, A asks B to buy his cell phone for 1,000. B refused. However, anong nangyari? A then punches B in the face until he agreed to buy it. So, merong physical contact. Okay? Pero meron pa tayo nabanggit kanina. Huwag niyong kakalimutan yung irresistible. Okay? Irresistible. Okay? So, for example, may way naman pala si B para to fight back. Let's say, let's say malaki ang katawan niya. Itong si A hindi naman pero ganun pa man, hinayaan niya lang, parang ganun, okay? So actually it's a matter of parang medyo na siya, dapat kumbaga irresistible talaga. Dapat there's no way na parang kumbaga mapigilan mo, okay? Pero in that case, yung sinasabi ko nga, okay, paano kung ganun, malaki ang katawan mo, you have a way of fighting back or running, parang ganun, pwede ka namang tumakbo, pero nagstay ka doon. Okay, so, pwedeng maging reason yun na perfectly valid na yung contract kapag ganun. Okay? So, dapat irresistible. Okay? Next. Pangalawa sa vices of consent natin is yung tinatawag nating intimidation. So, ang pagkakaiba nito from the first one is yung violence merong physical contact. However, in intimidation, wala pong physical contact dito. So, when one of the contracting parties is compelled, okay? So, compelled daw siya by a reasonable and well-grounded fear of an imminent and grave evil upon his person, okay? Sa kanya mismo or sa kanyang property or upon the person or property of his spouse, descendants or ascendants to give his consent. Okay? So, kumbaga pag sinabi nating intimidation, binantaan ka. Okay? Binantaan ka. Okay? At feeling mo seryoso yung bantang yun, kaya napa-oo ka na lang dun sa contract. So, for example, si A asks B to lease B's land or else he will set B's house in fire. Okay. Nung nagbanta si A na susunugin niya ang bahay ni B, Si B, syempre, takot. Dahil let's say, itong si A, mukhang kriminal. At sa further na pagre-research niya, may record na rin ito na arson, parang gano'n, di ba? Tagasunog talaga pala to. So ayan, talagang matatakot siya. Okay, so dahil doon, napa-oo na lang siya dahil hindi naman din siya makapagsumbong sa pulis kasi aligid-aligid, for example lang, di ba? Okay, so in this case, itong contract na mabubuo between A and B is a voidable one. Okay? So, meron perong exemption itong intimidation. Okay? May exemption yan. Actually, hindi naman talaga siya exemption. Okay? So, for example, a threat to enforce one's claim. Okay? Although threat siya, pero yung threat na yun ay legal. Okay? To enforce one's claim through competent authority if the claim is just or legal does not vitiate consent. Although nakaka-intimidate siya, di ba? Mata-threaten mo siya into going on with the contract, okay? At least yung pagbabanta mo legal, okay? Unlike dun sa nauna nating example na susunugin mo yung bahay. So for example, ito, A asks B to lease B's land or else he will sue B because he, tinutukoy dyan si B, he violated A's right of easement regarding B's property. So merong na-violate si B. Okay? At kapag hindi pumayag si B na pumasok sa isang kontrata between them, ano mangyayari? Kakasuhan niya daw. Okay? So yung pagkaso niya is actually legal yan, di ba? Legal yan, legal na pagbabantayan. So yung pagbabantang yun, yung intimidation na yun, hindi po siya magre-result into a vitiated consent. Meaning, hindi po magiging voidable yung magiging contract nila dito. Perfectly valid po ito. Okay? So next, punta naman tayo sa pangatlong vice to consent. Mistake. Okay, so what is the definition? Mistake that refers to the substance of the object, identity of a person, or conditions that have principally moved one or both parties to enter into a contract. Okay? So, hindi porket mistake, automatically, nakaka-vitiate ng consent. May mga mistake na nakakapag-vitiate ng consent, may mga hindi rin. Okay? So, tignan natin itong mga examples natin. So, unang example, SNB entered into a contract of sale for a piece of land worth 1 million. The clerk who made the deed of sale mistakenly typed 100,000. Okay? So in this case, nagkaroon ng mistake as to the written price in the instrument. So actually, itong mistake na to, hindi niya na po na-vitiate yung consent. Bakit? Kasi si SNB, alam naman nila na 1 million yan. Sadyang mali lang yung nakasulat dun sa deed of sale, which is caused by the mistake of the clerk. At itong mistake na to, walang effect ito sa kontrata between S and B. So, kung hindi ito voidable, kasi itong mistake na to na nabanggit sa example na to, hindi po siya nakaka-vitiate ng consent. So, meaning, hindi magiging voidable yung contract between S and B. So, meaning, perfectly valid na ito. Pero may problema pa rin yung contract nila, yung deed of sale. Mali yung nakalagay. So, ano ang tamang remedy dito? So, kung maalala nyo yung topic natin sa chapter 4, okay, reformation of contract, that is the proper remedy here. Okay, actually ang nire-reform mo is yung instrument, okay, that will represent the contract. You will reform the deed of sale. That is the proper remedy in this example. Hindi po annulment kasi hindi naman siya voidable contract. Okay? So another example tayo. Okay? A, believing that B is his long-lost brother, agreed to donate him, okay, a house and lot. Okay? So, ano nangyari? Nagkamali siya as to the identity, okay, of a person involving a contract of donation to, ha? Okay, so in this case, the contract of donation between A and B will be a voidable contract because na-vitiate yung consent ni A. Okay, at ano yung naging cause ng pagkaka-vitiate ng consent niya? Through mistake, nagkamali siya with regards to the identity of B. Okay? Next, another example na naman. Okay? So this time, S sold to be a diamond ring. Later on, both of them found out it is fake. Okay. So, honest mistake. So, wala pang element ng fraud dito kasi hindi ko naman sinabi na alam naman ni S na fake yun pero pinabilib niya si B. Hindi po ganun yung situation dito. Pareho po silang inosente in this case. Nalaman nila pareho na fake pala yun after mangyari yung contract, di ba? So, in this case, this is a voidable contract. Pwede nilang mapa-void to. Okay? Kasi this is mistake on both of their part. Okay? So, kung mapapansin nyo, yung una nating example, ang nagkamali lang, okay, ang na-vitiate lang yung consent ay si A. Sa sumunod na example, nagkaroon ng mutual mistake between S and B. Okay? And sabi natin, both of these examples will vitiate consent and will result eventually to a voidable contract. Okay? So, ano nga ba itong mga examples na to? Okay? Meron kasi tayong dalawang example or parang kumbaga classification ng mistake under the law. Okay? First is the mistake of fact. Okay? So, ito yung mistake of fact. Kumbaga, yung fact. Okay? For example, yung nature ng diamond ring which is the object of the contract. Okay? It is a fact na fake pala yan. Okay? Hindi talaga diamond. Okay. So, nakopy ko. And yung isa naman, ito naman, A believing that his that B is his long lost brother. So, in this case, the fact is, hindi pala ito yung long lost brother niya, which is nagkaroon ng mistake. Okay? So, nagkamali tayo dito. Pareho yung nakopy natin. Okay? So, in mistake of fact, whether it is mutual or not, okay, tatandaan nyo to, whether it is mutual or not, it will result to a voidable contract. Okay, tatandaan nyo yan. Next, another example, mistake pa rin tayo. Hindi pa rin tayo alis. Okay? So, when one or more of the vices of consent is present, okay, so ayan, mistake. So, in a pacto de retro sale, so by the way, ano yung pacto de retro sale? So, pacto de retro sale is a sale with a right to repurchase. Okay, binenta mo pero meron ka pa ring right para i-buy back yung binenta mo. Okay? So, between S, which is the vendor a retro, meaning siya yung originally nagbenta at meron siyang right para bilihin yun subsequently. Okay? And B, there was no redemption stated. Okay? Walang nabanggit dun sa kontrata nila na redemption period. Although, malinaw dun sa kontrata na ito ay isang pacto de retro sale, pero hindi nila nabanggit doon yung period or redemption period. Okay? So, si B, gusto niyang i-annul yung contract on the grounds of mistake. Bakit? Kasi akala niya, okay, ganito. Akala niya, dahil walang nakasulat na redemption period, hindi na pwedeng ma-redeem. Which is, actually, pag tinignan mo sa batas, hindi, ganun yun. Okay? Kapag walang nabanggit na redemption period, automatically, ang magte-take effect na redemption period is 4 years. Okay? Which is hindi alam ni B. Okay? So, this is a mistake of law. Okay? So, unlike dun sa nauna nating mga example, which are mistake of fact, this time, this is a mistake of law. Okay? So, will it vitiate consent? Or I mean, will it result eventually or ultimately to a voidable contract? The answer is no. Okay? Because, okay, syempre, yung pinaka-basis natin dyan is Article 3 of the Civil Code. Okay, ano yung Article 3? So that is, ignorance of the law excuses no one from compliance therewith. Okay, yun po yun. Okay, yun yung parang pinaka-basis natin dito. Okay, kung bakit kapag mistake of law ang pinag-uusapan, hindi siya magre-result into a voidable contract. Okay, hindi niya pwedeng maging excuse yun para mag-avail ng annulment of the contract. However, okay, so yan natin, mistake of law. So mistake of law yan. Article 3 of the Civil Code, ignorance of the law excuses no one from compliance therewith. However, meron tayong exemption. If there is what we call a mutual mistake of law, kung parehong parties nalito, okay, hindi nila alam, okay, hindi na po mag-a-apply yung Article 3. Ang mag-a-apply na po is yung Article 1334, which is, ang sabi dito, mutual error as to the legal effect of an agreement when the real purpose of the parties is frustrated may, okay, actually mayroon pa diyang may, okay, ibig sabihin pwedeng hindi pa rin, di ba? May vitiate consent, okay? So tatandaan nyo, general rule, kapag mistake of law, hindi po nabivitiate ang consent. Anong reason ulit? Dahil sa Article 3, ignorance of the law excuses no one from compliance therewith. Pero meron tayong pwedeng maging exemption kapag nagkakaroon ng tinatawag na mutual mistake of law. Okay? So next, punta naman na tayo sa fraud. Okay? This is the pang-apat na one of the vices of consent. So, ang definition nito, ayan, through insidious words or machinations of one of the contracting parties, the other is induced, okay, to enter into a contract which without them, okay, ang tinutukoy na without them, without the fraud, okay, or the insidious words or machinations, he would not have agreed to. Okay? So, yan. Okay? So, kung maaalala nyo, sigurado ako naaalala nyo to. Dolo incidente, dolo cosante. So, nabanggit natin yan last time. Anong pagkakaiba niyan ulit? Okay? Tingnan natin ang pagkakaiba. Pag dolo incidente, usually yan yung fraud na ini-employ mo. Okay? Na ini-employ mo. Usually kapag tapos nang ma-perfect yung contract or tapos nang magawa yung contract. At ang dolo cosante naman, usually, okay, ini-employ yan before mabuo ang isang kontrata. Pero actually, that's not the case. Okay? Kasi may mga instances na nagkakaroon pa rin ng dolo incidente before, okay, or in obtaining consent or before mabuo ang isang kontrata. So, ang tamang distinction between dolo incidente and dolo cosante is whether, okay, deviate consent or not. Okay, so that is the proper distinction between these two. So, si dolo incidente, this never, okay, vitiate consent and will never, okay, result to a voidable contract. Pero itong dolo cosante, ito yung nagvitiate ng consent, okay, which is yung tinutukoy na vice of consent, yung fraud, ito yung fraud na tinutukoy dito. This one vitiates consent and will eventually make a contract voidable. Okay? So let's have an example para mas maintindihan natin yung sinasabi ko kanina. So X applies for a job with a requirement of 3 to 5 years experience on a specific job. So let's say yung requirement na yan, it's a must, talagang importante, talagang in-emphasize doon sa ating job posting na dapat meron talaga yan. Hindi lang siya, kumbaga, hindi lang siya parang advantage, pero it is a requirement talaga. Okay. Ano nangyari? Though having only 3 years of experience, X made it appear that he has 5 years of experience. Okay. So the question is, will this vitiate consent in hiring X. For example, he is the only one. He's the only person that met the requirement. Okay? He is the only person dun sa mga nag-apply. O ewan ko kung bakit nag-apply pa rin yung iba, di ba? Despite na hindi nila naabot yan. Okay? Si X lang nakaabot dun sa 3 to 5 years. Pero may ginawa siya. Okay? May kalukuhan pa rin siyang ginawa. Sabi niya 5 years, although 3 years. Although, di ba nga, pag-iisipin mo, kahit naman na 3 years ang nilagay niya doon, ma-hire pa rin siya kasi yan yung requirement. Pasok pa rin doon sa requirement. So in this case, yung klaseng fraud na in-employ ni X dito, it is what we call an incidental fraud. However, the timing, okay, ang timing is before mabuo ang isang kontrata, specifically the contract of employment, di ba? Or in obtaining consent, di ba? During obtaining consent. So, hindi porket yung fraud ay in-employ in obtaining consent ay automatically dolo cosante siya. Hindi po. Pwede siyang maging dolo incidente. Bakit? Kasi hindi siya nakaka-vitiate ng consent. That's the simple reason. Okay. Now, let's tignan natin itong susunod na example naman. Very similar, pero may pagkakaiba. X applies for a job with a requirement of 3 to 5 years experience on a specific job. Though having no experience, X made it appear he has 5 years. So, ganito. Niloko niya yung resume niya. Ang requirement, 3 to 5 years. Kaso, wala siyang experience. Okay? So, in this case, kung alam nung employer or kung alam nung recruiting ng recruitment personnel na yon na wala talaga siyang experience, so hindi niya i-hire, di ba? So ganun lang yun. Okay? Unlike doon sa kanina na despite whether 3 years, 5 years man yan, i-hire niya pa rin kasi pasok sa minimum requirement. Pero dito, hindi pasok. Okay? So in this case, malaking bagay ito. Okay? Malaking bagay ito dun sa decision na gagawin nung recruitment personnel. Okay? So in this case, this will be considered a causal fraud or dolo cosante. Okay? Which will vitiate the consent and eventually will result to a voidable employment contract kapag natuloy man yung employment contract, di ba? Okay. So another example naman. So S sold to B his specific car. Before S delivered the car to B, he changed the engine without informing B. So anong ginawa niya? Pinalitan niya yung engine. So ang nangyari dito tapos na eh. Tapos na yung contract. Nabenta na. I-deliver na lang. Kaso bago niya i-deliver, may kalokohan pa siyang ginawa. Pinalitan niya yung makina without informing B. So, malinaw na panloloko yun. Okay, so in this case, will this result to a voidable contract? The answer is no. Okay, because, there is already a perfected contract before the fraud was employed. Di ba? Meron ng perfectly valid contract and after that, saka lang nagkaroon ng fraud. So in this case, it will not result to a voidable contract. This contract is perfectly valid. However, pag bumalik tayo sa obligations, ito yung tinutukoy ng obligations naman na fraud that will result to damages. Okay? So, balikan nyo na lang yung lesson natin sa obligations if nakalimutan nyo na. Okay? So, next, another example, fraud pa rin tayo. Okay. So, S offers B in-offer niya daw. Okay, so hindi natin nasulat. S offers B to sell, to sell his Rolex watch. Binibenta ni S yung Rolex watch niya daw kay B. S made B believe it is genuine, although he knew it is fake. So this is fraud. Okay? Ang nangyari kasi, alam niya na fake yun before niya palang i-offer kay B. Ibig sabihin, bago mabuo yung contract of sale, meron ng panglolokong nagaganap. So in this case, this will result to a voidable contract kapag natuloy yung bentahan. Okay? So another example. Okay. This time medyo may pagkakaiba. Okay. S offers B to a Rolex watch. Okay, so ganun pa rin, binebenta ni S yung Rolex watch. Pero this time, anong pagkakaiba? B asked S if it is genuine and S responded that he think it is. So this time, hindi rin alam ni S kung genuine ba yun or hindi, basta binebenta niya lang. Okay, so meron tayong nakalagay dito. Ito importante ito. S is not an expert. Okay. So feeling niya lang original, di ba? Feeling niya lang genuine yung Rolex watch na yun. Okay? So in this case, will this example result to a voidable contract? Yun muna ang tanong ko. Yes or no? The answer is yes. Pero meron bang fraud? Yun ang tanong. Meron bang fraud? The answer is there is none. Walang fraud. Pero bakit naging voidable pa rin? Oo. Kasi hindi na ito magfo-fall under fraud. Magfo-fall na to under mistake kung maalala nyo, di ba? So, ang nangyari kasi, hindi rin naman alam ni S kung genuine yun or hindi. Feeling niya lang, genuine yun. So, nagbanggit lang siya ng kanyang opinion. Di ba? Opinion lang yung binanggit niya. Yes, sabi niya, feeling ko genuine yan, original yan. Okay? Although, di ba, hindi niya rin naman alam na fake yun. Okay? So in this case, kung magiging voidable man tong contract na to, hindi dahil sa fraud, kundi dahil sa mistake. Kung maalala nyo, mutual mistake of fact. Okay? So in this case, mutual mistake of fact. Okay? So next example, yan. Importante, malaking pagkakaiba. Same situation, pero this time S is an expert when it comes to Rolex watches. Okay? So this time expert siya. Kilala siya bilang isang eksperto. Okay? Sa mga Rolex watches. At alam yun ni B. Okay? Kaya nagtiwala siya. Okay? So ang nangyari, S offers B. Ayan, binebenta niya. So, nung tinanong ni B if it is genuine, sabi ni S, yes, I think, yes. Okay? At dahil doon, syempre, nagtiwala si B. Okay? Kasi alam niya nga, expert si S sa pagtingin ng mga genuine Rolex watches. Diba? So, ayan, nagtiwala siya doon. Kaya, binili niya. Okay? So, in this case, again, just like the first one, magiging voidable pa rin tong contract na to. Pero this time, okay, ang reason kung bakit siya naging voidable ay dahil sa fraud. Okay? Hindi na mistake. Dahil, anong pagkakaiba? Expert kasi si S eh. Di ba? Expert si S. So, kahit sabihin natin, nagkamali lang siya. Expert siya. Hindi siya pwedeng magkamali. Di ba? So, this is fraud. Okay? This is fraud this time. Magiging voidable yung contract because of fraud. Okay? Next, last tayo. Pagdating sa vices of consent, which is the undue influence. So, definition. When a person takes improper advantage of his power over the will of another, depriving the latter of a reasonable freedom of choice. Okay, so, para mas maintindihan natin to, example. Okay? Your professor asks to marry you. You are of age, but the biggest factor for you saying yes is because he is your professor. And if you say no, you are afraid he might be disappointed and he will fail you in class. Okay, so ayun. Okay, so pinakasalan mo. Okay? Pero yung pagpapakasal mo, okay, yung consent mo, di ba? Is vitiated by undue influence, di ba? Vitiated yung consent mo because of undue influence. Okay? So in this case, the marriage contract is voidable. Okay? Voidable. So meron tayong reason para ipa-annul to eventually later on. Okay? So yun po yung undue influence natin. Okay. Next, punta tayo sa pang-apat na section ng ating topic ngayon. So annulment of a voidable contract. So yun nga, sabi natin kanina, voidable contracts are valid, okay? Valid, binding, and enforceable pa rin siya until annulled. Pag inannul mo, ito yung i-invalidate mo na siya. Okay? So ayan. When annulment cannot proceed. So kailan hindi pwedeng i-annul ang isang contract? Number 1, when the object of the contract is lost. Okay? Hindi lang hindi lang basta-basta loss. Ang reason of loss is through the fault of the person who may annul the contract. Okay? So maya-maya titignan natin kung sino yung mga pwedeng mag-annul. Okay? So tatandaan nyo, number 1, when the object of the contract is lost because of the fault of the person who may annul the contract. So very simple, di ba? Next, number 2, when the contract is ratified. So sabi natin dati, ang ratification ay pag-cure ng defect ng isang defective contract. So kapag na-cure ang defect ng isang defective contract, hindi na siya defective. Okay? So meaning magiging perfectly valid contract na siya. So once na na-ratify ang isang voidable or annullable contract, magiging perfectly valid na siya. So therefore, hindi na pwedeng mag-proceed ang annulment. Okay? Next, who can annul voidable contract? So in case of incapacity, yung incapacitated person, kapag nawala na yung kanyang incapacity. So for example, minor, di ba incapacitated siya. So pwede niyang ma-annul yung voidable contract kapag capacitated na siya. For example, nakipag-enter siya into a contract during 17 years old. So hindi niya pa pwedeng ipa-annul kaagad. Mapapa-annul niya na lang ito kapag na-reach niya na ang 18 years old. Doon na lang siya magkakaroon ng opportunity para ma-annul yung voidable contract na pinasukan niya. And number 2 naman, yung mga persons na na-vitiate yung kanilang consent. So for example, yung mga naloko, yung nagkamali, parang gano'n, di ba? Nagkamali, naloko, pag fraud, di ba? Naloko, yung nagkamali, mistake, yung violence, yung kunwari, yung example natin kanina, yung sinuntok, siya yung pwedeng mag-annul ng voidable contract. Pag intimidation naman, yung person na in-intimidate. And undue influence, yung hindi nakapag-decide or yung napilitan na pumasok dun sa contract because of the undue influence na ine-exert nung kabilang party. Okay, so sila yung mga pwedeng mag-annul ng isang voidable contracts. Okay? Next, when can it be annulled? Okay, so number 1, so isa-isahin natin. In case of incapacity, so ito yung rule natin. Within 4 years after guardianship of minors or incapacitated person ceases. Okay, so example natin. S sold to M, 17 years old, ilan? Okay, so si M, 17 years old pa lang. So, meaning, yung contract between S and M ay voidable. So, nung na-reach niya na ang 18 years old, that's the time na pwede niya nang ipa-annul yung contract. Okay? So, kailan pwedeng maipa-annul? Pwede ba para unlimited ba yung kung kailan mo pwedeng ipa-annul? Hindi po, may limit pa rin. So, kapag na-reach mo na ang 18 years old, so diyan na magsisis yung incapacity or yung guardianship, parang gano'n, di ba? So, ang mangyayari is magbibilang na po yung 4 years. So, meron kang window of 4 years para i-annul yung contract na yun. So, once na nakapag 18 years old ka na, M can avail annulment within 4 years until, di ba, kailan? Until his last day being 22 years old. So, pag magbibilang tayo, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. So, kapag 23 years old na siya, hindi na pwede. Okay? Magiging perfectly valid na yung contract na yun. Hindi na siya voidable. Kasi anong mangyayari? Nawala na yung ability niya para i-annul yung contract. So, kapag babalikan natin yung obligations natin, extinguishment of obligation, nag-prescribe na, di ba? Ito yung ito yung tawag sa ano, nag-prescribe na yung kanyang right to annul the contract. Okay? So 4 years ang prescriptive period natin when it comes to annulment. Actually, diretsong 4 years yan, pero depende sa situation. So ito yung situation kapag incapacitated. Next, punta naman tayo sa pangalawa. Within 4 years after intimidation, violence, or undue influence ceases. Okay, so ayan. 4 years pa rin, pero this time kapag ang reason ay violations of consent, specifically intimidation, violence, and undue influence, magbibilang nyo lang yung 4 years once na natapos or nag-cease yung mga intimidation, yung violence, and yung undue influence. So let's take for example yung ano, di ba? Yung kanina, yung example natin, undue influence. Okay, so balikan natin. Ito, yung professor, di ba? So ang pinaka kumbaga nagpo-push sa iyo kung para magsabi ng yes ay yun nga, tawag dito. Because instructor mo siya at baka i-fail ka niya sa class na yun, okay? So yung undue influence na yun ay ano, nagte-take effect hanggat professor mo pa rin siya. Pero once na natapos na yung klase, magsisis na yung undue influence. Okay? So, ayan. And last, okay, ito. Within 4 years, paano naman yung dalawa, di ba? Kasi 5 yung violations of consent natin, 3 pa lang yung nabanggit natin kanina, di ba? Intimidation, violence, undue influence, ceases. Dito naman, iba yung rule when it comes to mistake or fraud. 4 years from the date or from the time of discovery. Okay? So, pwedeng hindi mo kasi malaman kaagad na nagkamali ka or hindi mo malaman kaagad na naloko ka. Di ba? So, magbibilang lang yung 4 years from the time na ma-discover mo or malaman mo. Okay? So, yan yung mga prescriptive period natin when it comes to the right in annulling a voidable contract. Okay, so next, punta tayo sa pang-5 section ng ating discussion or topic for this video. So, what is the difference between annulment and rescission? Okay? Although maraming differences yan, pero mag-focus tayo sa 3 differences. Siyempre, number 1 is the pinaka-obvious na difference. Okay? Yung first. Okay, annulment is the remedy to invalidate a voidable contract. However, the rescission is the remedy which is used to invalidate a rescissible contract. So basically, annulment and rescission will result to the same effect, which is the pag-i-invalidate ng isang contract, di ba? Defective contract, pero magkaiba yung ini-invalidate niya, yung sa annulment, voidable, yung sa rescission, rescissible. Okay, pero in effect, pares lang yung gagawin nila. Ang mangyayari is, kung ano man yung natanggap ng both parties within that contract, is kailangan nilang ibalik yun sa isa't isa. Kung hindi nila pwedeng maibalik, yun nga mangyayari is hindi pwedeng mag-proceed ang annulment or rescission. Kaya nga kanina, okay, isa ring factor kung bakit hindi pwedeng hindi pwedeng mag-proceed ang annulment if kapag nawala yung object with regards to the di ba? Okay? So, pangalawang difference. Annulment is a principal remedy, however, rescission is only a subsidiary remedy. So meaning ganito, kapag rescission, balik tayo sa rescission, hindi ko alam kung nabanggit ito in the previous video. Pero in rescission, kapag merong other remedy, okay? For example, pwede namang, let's say, balikan natin yung example ng lesion, di ba? Kapag nagkaroon ng lesion, parang kulang yung inadequacy of cost, di ba? May kulang sa cost. So, imbis na i-rescind yung contract, pwede namang bayaran na lang yung kulang. Parang gano'n, di ba? So, kapag kayang bayaran yung kulang, yun muna. Okay? Yun muna ang gagawin. Hindi mo pwedeng i-push yung rescission. Okay? Hanggat kayang punan yung kulang, di ba? Parang gano'n. However, in annulment, the annulment is a principal remedy. Meaning, pwede mong i-annul kaagad yan. Kahit na mayroon pang other, let's say, other way para, di ba? Para maano yung contract, di ba? Parang kung maremedyohan yung contract, di ba? So, let's say may mga other ways pa. Hindi na. Pwede kang dumiretso diyan, principal, kasi principal remedy siya. Pwede mong ipa-annul. Okay? So, and last, okay, annulment is usually availed by parties to a contract. Kung makapansin nyo kanina, nung tinignan natin kung sino yung mga persons na pwedeng mag-annul ng contract. Kung mapapansin nyo, lahat sila parties to the contract. However, in rescission, ang pwedeng mag-avail ng rescission ay yung mga injured person. Even if that person is not a party to a contract. Kung maaalala nyo yung yung mga tawag dito, mga transactions in fraud of creditors, kung maaalala nyo, di ba? Isang example ng rescissionable contract yon. Okay? So, yan yung tatlong malalaking pagkakaiba ng rescission and annulment. Okay? And lastly, punta tayo sa last section ng topic natin ngayon, which is the voidable contracts. So ayan, ratification of voidable contracts. So who may ratify? Sino ang pwedeng mag-ratify? Simple lang. Kung sino ang pwedeng mag-annul, siya ang pwedeng mag-ratify. Okay? Hindi ito pwedeng i-ratify nung kabilang party na hindi pwedeng mag-annul. Okay? So tatandaan nyo, kung sino yung pwedeng mag-annul ng contract, siya rin yung pwedeng mag-ratify. Tatandaan nyo yan. Okay? Paano i-ratify? Ang ratification pwede siyang gawin orally. Ibig sabihin mo lang, or in writing, or maybe implied. So ano nga ba itong implied? Meron tayong example. So suppose S sold this car to B in installment. Upon reaching, okay, let's say 17 years old siya. Okay? Nagbabayad siya installment every month. So na-reach niya na ang 18 years old. So this time pwede niya nang i-annul yung contract which is originally voidable. Pero anong nangyari? Instead of annulling the contract, anong ginawa niya? B continued to pay S. Okay? His action indicates that he ratified the voidable contract. Bakit? Kasi willing pa rin siya bayaran dire-diretso. Meron na siyang opportunity para i-annul. Sir, but ano nangyari? Di ba meron pa rin namang 4 years? Hindi. Okay, yung 4 years yan, parang kumbaga prescriptive period yan. Pero in this case, okay, it is evident na gusto niyang ituloy yung contract, di ba? Gusto niyang ituloy yung contract kasi dire-diretso pa rin siya magbabayad despite na 18 years old na siya. Okay, so in this case, impliedly ratified yung contract nila. Okay? So